Hi and welcome back to Art with Miss Marci. For those that don't know me, I'm an artist and an art teacher, and the first episode that I did, we made some Matisse inspired cutout art, and we had some leftovers, and I'm going to show you those leftovers right now. I asked you not to throw them away because we're going to actually push that a little bit further and layer these down and make another artwork. So let's get to it. Okay, so my other glue stick has run out, so I've got a new one. And as with my first episode, we want to keep this really inclusive so it can be adapted for any needs that you may be working with. So what I have here is my glue stick, my scraps, some cotton wool, and some food colouring in water. So all stuff that you can get from supermarkets or that you may have already around the home. Just going to add a couple more drops of blue to this one. So what I want to do here is layer my scraps in a couple of different ways. Now I've got these nice little pieces, they're really interesting and beautiful, and they'll make nice little strips like that. And in the first few pieces they were quite organic, and this one I want it to make it a little bit more geometric. Now for this particular piece, depending on your abilities and the abilities of the art maker, you can either do the cutting or the art maker can cut for themselves. But I'm just cutting strips of our offcuts from the first artworks that we made, and they're nice rectangular strips that can be laid out and used to build a new artwork. Now I was going to use that one, but I quite like that, just like that, so I might save that one. We do have these. Now these have little rips in them, so I'm just going to cut strips from the bits that don't have rips. If you're working with an art maker that is able to cut their own strips, this is really great for developing cutting skills and trying to follow lines. You can actually use a ruler and rule out some lines on the back and have them follow that. So I might do some of that right now. Let's see if I can find a ruler in here. Well, let's get creative. I don't have a ruler handy, so I'm just going to use just one of the sides of the shapes that I used from my first activity. Draw some lines, and I would have my art maker try to follow those lines to practice their cutting skills. If your art maker would struggle with that, you can include them by having them choose which strips they're cutting, or which strips you would be cutting for them, if they'd be cutting across, vertically, diagonally, which pieces they'd like, whether they'd like to use some of the offcuts from the artwork or some of the offcuts from the magazine. So there's heaps of different ways that you can include your art maker if your art maker isn't able to use scissors. So just cut those there. Now for this bit you can use glue and paste down, much like we did in our first activity, and you can use one of two techniques. You can run your glue on the back of your pieces and then paste them down, or you can add glue on your paper and then stick down. But for this particular activity I'm actually going to get some contact, so just bear with me for a sec. I have some contact paper left over from beginning of term where I was covering books, and I'm just going to cut a strip, and you can make it an A4 piece or it can just be whatever you've got. Now I'm going to use these to make some translucent artworks, so it doesn't matter if what size they are. I'll frame them up afterwards. So I'm just gonna, I was gonna use this for translucent artworks. Turns out it's white contact paper, so that puts a spanner in the mix. Let's try it with this anyway, and we can work towards a different goal. The whole thing about making art at home, or making art in any kind of environment, is that you can adapt and change. Things don't always go to plan, and that's okay. I find that the most interesting art happens when you've got you know, challenges to deal with, and things don't work out, and then you end up making things that are a little bit more interesting than what you had planned. So I've got my very sticky paper. Now, a really good way to stick this down would be with some blue tack that I just luckily had there. I'm just going to put some in the corner there. Good thing about this white contact is that it peels off itself very easily, much more easily than the clear stuff, because it is thicker. Now, I'm just struggling a little bit here, that's okay. It's good to see that things aren't always seamless and perfect. It makes it much more achievable for everyone participating. So I've got my pieces there, and I'm just going to put them on as tightly as I can to create my picture. Now, the good thing about this is that you can mix and match colors, but because they're all from the old artwork that you've made, they'll really complement each other and work together nicely. And you keep layering, and then, so when you're doing this, you're not just learning about making art and creating these really interesting patterns. You can also be looking at reuse and how to you know, be sustainable in your art making. You can also be looking at pattern making. You could be also looking at your shapes and your colors. So you're really creating a really varied response in your art making that can look at different topics that your art maker would be looking at in the classroom or in everyday life, and that they can apply to other subjects as well. I'm just going to tear that because I'm being a little bit lazy, and I know that I'm on the edge. Now, this is a really beautiful brickwork pattern, and it's creating a really lovely design. Just fitting that in there. Beautiful. Snip that. That one. And that one. Two edges there. And there you have it. Now you could keep going and work through there, but otherwise you've got this beautiful work, and then that's done. Now, I did have my little framed piece from earlier. Now, this is a really nice idea that you can just cycle artworks and frame a different one every week, or as you go along. You can have the artwork of the week sort of thing. So I'm just going to trim that. And slide that in there. Oh, I need a little trim on the top too. There we go. Layer that in, and you've got a new artwork of the week. That makes a really beautiful artwork there. So another way that you can do this is to combine some of this scrap joining with your watercolor painting. Now if you don't have watercolors, again you can use food coloring, and you can use food coloring in place of watercolors even if you want to just try something different. The great thing about using watercolors is that they are non-toxic, so if you're working with an art maker that is likely to put something in their mouth, this makes it nice and safe for them, and you don't have to worry too much about anything like that. Now I've got my extra scraps that I'm using. Again, this time I'm just sticking them, but I'm still layering. This time I'm going to be a little bit more adventurous. I'm not going to be doing the brickwork pattern. I'm using all those scraps that I cut out to try to create a really interesting layered pattern. Now the thing that I really love about art is creating something that you can't just see. So I can't Google the result of this until I've made it. There's no pre-existing image of what I'm making. So I do value the skill that goes into creating photorealistic art, but there's just something a little bit extra special for me when an artwork is absolutely unique and something completely new that hasn't been seen before. So I'm just sticking down all these scraps, and I'm thinking I might like to use some of the thicker pieces of card as well, which makes it nice in the sense that it's not it's just got a bit of relief in there. So texturally this is really nice to touch. And it's really nice to work in a way that you are using all your materials holistically and to show a process. It kind of builds a bit of a portfolio, and a lot of artists work this way anyway. They have a collection of pieces that are all in the similar range. You look at Picasso's Blue Period, or you're looking at Matisse's cutouts. There's always a theme that correlates through them, and then the artist might move on. And the same thing what happens when your art maker is making works. You're building up on a theme, on a technique, on a style, and you're learning throughout that process. Okay, I'm really loving this color combination. And I think I'll just add one more, maybe. Just about there. Just join that up. There we go. Now, getting to our cotton buds. Now I'm going to dip it into our paint. Now I'm relinquishing a little bit of control here by just popping that cotton bud on the paper and just kind of letting it go. Now I did have leftover food coloring. Oh, sorry, cotton ball. These aren't cotton buds. So I'm kind of being quite liberal with how much this soaks up. Okay. I do have a couple of cotton buds here, and you might want to try that. So I'm just soaking them on both ends and putting them on. Maybe one more. And I'll find it's a little bit more. Okay, so now the dishes are empty. Now what I'm going to use is, if I can find it, oh here, I'm going to rip out a new page actually. So you'll notice that a lot of the time I keep the process paper. So we've got that in and we're going to squeeze it down and really put some pressure on our page, just like that. Okay, and then we're going to lift that up and you'll have some colours, and you can use a paintbrush or tweezers or whatever you like to move these around. You can use your fingers, but you will have some staining. And we're going to repeat the process. So we've got some nice drippy colours through there. And you could use pegs or clamps, and this makes it fun by lifting those just like that. And again, you would adapt this based on ability. So if you have an art maker that can't actually press your peg, you might want to get some pegs from the washing line and then have them pre-pegged like that so that they can just simply lift and place them. If you're working with an art maker that can't lift, you can always work with them hand on hand and ask them to indicate where they would like items to be placed. Now we've got this beautiful collation built up, and again I really want to cover up those coal slogans, so I'm going to get my watercolours and a little bit of my water, and we're going to get some nice bright reds. So if you don't have watercolours, again, you can use your food colouring, or you can get creative with a lot of other things as well. You can make up some paints by grinding up chalk and adding a little bit of water, or even old eyeshadows and things like that. I like to use non-toxic ingredients so that it's really inclusive for all my students and family and friends, regardless of ages. So for me, these non-toxic watercolour blocks, which are readily available in your supermarkets or food colouring, are the best option. But what you have in the house will work just as easily. Now, I just want to paint in some red where all the white is to start off with. Now that includes the white of my Coles prices. And the more paint you pick up, the darker it'll be. And then I want these beautiful shapes in the middle to have a nice focus color, and I'm going to be using green for this. So I'm using my light green and really picking up a lot of paint by going round and round and round. For my younger students that really like little songs and nursery rhymes, we always do the round and round the garden song, but you can change that to suit. And I'm just filling that up. There you go. You've got a really beautiful, colourful artwork that used a few different techniques and that had that little fun element of squeezing the cotton balls and cotton buds full of ink to create really nice drippy effects. As with my previous video, if you're working with someone that needs some support that's hand on hand, you can have some clothes pegs and you can ask them to indicate the colour they would like. So can you point out the colour that you'd like to choose? Okay, that one, I'm going to peg it for you. Now we can hold this one together. Now I'm just going to squeeze that. So let's hold that. And where should we put it? Should we put it here or here? Okay, we're going to put that one there, and I'm going to hold the peg with you, and we're going to release that. And we can repeat that process. Another way that we can do it, especially if someone is sensory sensitive and they don't want to be touching anything that's going to stain their fingers, you can ask them to just indicate and point. So a nice way to do that is with a pencil, because then they can add their marks to the work. Now I'm going to choose a nice, well actually no, I'm going to invite my art maker to choose their colour. So choose a colour. Which one do you like? Okay, you're choosing yellow. And you can hold that one. Can you point onto the paper where you'd like me to point to put your cotton bud? Okay, put the cotton ball there. Now Miss Marci is going to choose a different one, and you show me where I should put it. And I put it there, and we'd repeat this process until all the pages were filled, indicating where you'd like. And in the process, they may be marking the paper. And then their work would have elements that were completely theirs. Now again, we're going to do the pressing. So I'm putting my previously pressed piece of paper down over this, and I'm going to ask my art maker if I can use their hand and help them press down. So let's tap, tap, tap. Can I press down? Tap, tap, tap a little harder. And we can make a game of it and squeeze some of that ink out. Fabulous. Let's peel this off and have a look. And we have built more layers on our original piece and built some more splodges on this one. Now these pieces can be used at our next project to make flowers or water lilies. They're really, really versatile, and you can just set them aside and keep them much like the scraps that we used in this art making session today. So this kind of wraps up our Matisse unit. Now it'd be really, really lovely to show some images of the Matisse cutouts. I'll just include some at the end of this little video so that you can share them with your art maker. And as with the other ones that we made, mounting it up on some nice black card or framing it gives it a completely different dimension. It gives it, it really elevates the work, and it's really quite important to honour your art maker's work, regardless of age, and it really celebrates it. You can create a little online gallery or use them as gifts, or just put them up around the house. That is just so much more special than something that you can buy at the shops. Now, next session we're going to be using our leftovers to look at some of Monet's water lilies, and we'll be building up on some watercolours like that. But again, everything that we're doing is using stuff from around the home, stuff that you have readily accessible or that you can get from a supermarket, and all relatively inexpensive, so you don't need to have fancy art materials to make art. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I mentioned before that you might like to check out some of the cutouts from Matisse's collection. I've Google image searched here, Henry Matisse cutouts, and I've got quite a few different images come up on the Google Images. But the first link shows you the cutouts exhibition from MoMA.org. So I've clicked on that, and that's taken me to the exhibition website. There's quite a bit of information there to get through. So you can go through that and adapt it based on the ability of your art maker. And then you can click through to the images in the exhibition website and have a look at the menu where you'll see the cutouts, the studio works, the swimming pool, and a little bit more about Matisse. I really like that when you click through you can see Matisse there working, he's cutting out, and you've got lots of the scraps on the floor, and that's really in line with the way that we were making art and saving our pieces, and they become part of the artwork as well.